Okay, so the concern with the DR and the safety of the DR is something that should be on everyone's radar. Why? Because the reputation of a country is going to directly affect the investment that you make. If a country is in fact unsafe, will people want to come here to vacation, to spend time? Abel talked about how the capital is a good place to invest. So we have to be concerned about this subject because it's something that can influence the decision to invest or not, okay? Now, the Dominican Republic is like any other country. Things happen. Depending on where you are, depending on how you conduct yourself, the decisions that you make. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Why is it that some foreigners have considered the DR to be unsafe? You know, I dealt with this topic in my YouTube channel, and the question that I posed, to what degree is the country the problem, and to what degree are the choices you make a problem? Because any foreigner visiting a country that they're not from, where they don't speak the language, has to automatically take certain precautions, which most of the time they don't. But all of us have been here. You've heard how long we've been here without incident. So where does the truth lie? What is the story? That's what we're going to discuss with our panel right now. And I don't know if you guys want to go one by one or just go as the ideas get you. Who wants to start?
What's the first question?
This panel, Abel, I'm not interviewing you. But anyway, no. If someone were to ask you the question, is it safe to live in the DR? What would make it safer? What would your response be?
Well, I wouldn't live in the DR or anywhere if I felt that it was unsafe to do so, much less spend 17, going on 18 years in this same place. I think all you really need is just common sense. Obviously you're not going to be walking around with something very valuable, showing it off, or walking around, inebriated or drunk, because obviously you could be the victim of something bad. But that could happen anywhere, any city in the U.S., any city in the world. If you don't practice basic common sense principles, then something could happen to you. But by having some sort of situational awareness, you can avoid most like 95%, 99% of negative things that could occur.
You know, he makes an interesting point when he talks about being inebriated. You know, you're a foreigner, and foreigners stick out like a sore thumb most of the time. And they don't speak the language. So if you're living crazy, the locals are going to see that. And when you live with, a certain type of lifestyle, you're in party mode all the time. The wrong people are going to pick up on that and target you. And this is not something, specific to the DR. This would happen anywhere. If you open a door, people are going to walk through it because it's easy access. So, if you come to DR and you're in party mode and you're not taking precautions, you wouldn't do that back home, right? You go back home, you go to a club. Are you drinking something from someone you don't know? So why would you do it here? So it's that when they come here, the inhibitions come down. And I think that's where the problem is. Abel talked about common sense. And for some reason, people come to the DR and it just stays on the plane. I don't know what it is. I had a whole YouTube on this and I'm like, what is going on with people? And so to what degree did the DR cause it, and to what degree did your, negligent attitude cause it? And especially if you don't speak the language, you have to be careful. You have to, Absolutely be careful because there are unsavory people everywhere. I want to say one thing. I was in an event in Samana. It was like an investment mastermind. Young guy, millionaire. So it was in this, 5-star resort. It was small group. And every evening, this boy had a run to, he went to the town. Like he got one of the hotel employees to run him to the town, hit every club you can imagine, went to have dinner at this man's house without knowing who he was. And all of this when he was drunk out of his mind. I had to sit him down and say, what are you doing? And then you're in an investment mastermind where it's understood that you have, that you have resources. Now you tell me where the sense in that is. And I basically had to assign military escort to this guy because he was just all over the place. Like I became his official babysitter.
It's the mama in you.
I know.
Complex.
I know, honey, but I want to come out in the news. All right, Stephen.
No fui yo. It wasn't
me.
What's up?
Okay, Stephen, talk to us a little bit about Puerto Plata. The reason I'm asking that is that Puerto Plata has a very large expat community. It's huge. What is it like in Puerto Plata? What for expats? What do you see?
Well, I think it's great. Most of the crime there is crime of opportunity. There's very little violent crime of any kind. There's no car break-ins. I drove a Toyota rental to the capital here, and they stole the mirrors and the plastic pieces off the front of the rack. It was a $500 plus the car rental for that weekend. Usually I don't drive a rental. Mine was in the shop. I've never heard of that happening on the North Shore. It's much quieter. It's much better, in my opinion. I do have some investment here in the capital, so my wife comes to check on it once in a while, but I try not to say it's just not for me. So Puerto Plata is a lot calmer. A lot of people know each other. It's a community. So as I mentioned earlier, I believe it's incredibly safe. I didn't worry about my kids when they were out and about like I did in the States. Of course, every year they got a little older, and so you worry about them a little less. But very rare that there's anything significant. Now, the press makes a big deal out of simple things, and sometimes they do not get the stories right and blow it way out of proportion, so you can't believe everything that you read. The police that I've had contact with have been well-trained and professional, and I know sometimes that's a little hard to believe because they don't spend a lot of time training, but I've never had an issue with the police. I did get a speeding ticket on the way here. Asked him where I could pay.
I've gotten a few.
Yeah. Actually, I passed on a double yellow line.
Deal with that before I renew my license.
You said you fished for a bribe and he didn't go for it?
I didn't even ask. I just.
No, I mean, you said, can I pay it here?
No, I didn't. Normally I would do that, but I knew I'd broken the law. There was a big truck and he was barely moving, and I crossed a double yellow line, and the law is crystal clear. That double yellow line is a wall, and you cannot climb over that wall. Oops. So I've had tickets before that never showed up on the system, so it didn't have to pay them. I don't know if this one will. Doesn't say how much it was, but I imagine it's a couple of thousand pesos. Ooh. So, but it seems incredibly safe. I'm lucky. I'm married to a Dominican woman in this aspect that has all kinds of ties. I have a couple of cards that I've never used, but if I ever needed to or was in a pinch, I have that option for me. High-ranking police officers, military officers, etc. But it's nice to have someone you can call if you ever have a problem. Friends and guests, I give them my card and say, call me anytime if anything comes up. Not sure what I could do in some cases, but I know others that might be able to. I don't think living here is a worry of any kind. I don't think it's any worse, or I know it's better, but I don't think it's any worse than living in the U.S., other than we didn't have 600 mass shootings in 2022 like the United States did. I've never even heard of one here. I don't think that happens here.
This man is throwing down gems, people.
Right? So
He's throwing down gems.
Out STDs to the kids here.
well, me,
Johnny, I'm happy.
I don't even know how to respond to that. But
He's a hot man.
you know, something that I
We
see,
love him.
I see a real diverse audience here. Something I love about this place is that we all get along. You'll find your community. If you're bored here, and this is kind of off subject, it's your fault. But I hike in the woods. I go out by myself all the time and never worry about a thing. I meet friendly people. I know this. Dominicans are the most friendly people in the world. If you were hungry and you knocked on somebody's door and said you were hungry, you're going to get fed. Whether they're broke or poor or don't have food, they are going to find something. Yeah. And I think that's, even the robbers kind of have that in them, I think, you know. Oh, I'm so sorry, you know. I had a friend that got his cell phone taken by force. He was drinking, wrong place, wrong time. And the guy that took it from him said, "I'm so sorry, man." Took it and turned away and ran off. You know, so it's a different world than what we're used to. You know.
So he, you know, I want to call attention to something he said. Two very important things out of, you know, what he mentioned. First of all, sensationalism. I'm getting to the point where I don't even watch news anymore, because what version are you getting?
Right.
Because I'm not of the opinion anymore that you watch the news and you're getting it straight. Sensationalism is what sells people. So to what degree, it's not about something happening in the DR. Let's turn that into an issue. Let's turn that into something that's ravaging the DR. Now that sounds better, doesn't it? So be very careful that you don't believe everything you read. I take the things that I read on the internet at face value. I find out for myself. And then based on my experience, I come to a determination. Because the third party perspective, that's tricky business. And that brings me to the second point that I appreciate. What is safety? Eye of the beholder, isn't it? Because if you're living in a country where you have mass shooting, where you have marches about racism and all this nonsense going on, abuse of power, what is safety? You're concerned about a local incident in the DR? Maybe you need to reevaluate that, because I don't care if some guy apologized after he took my phone. I could get another one with points. But the first, that's serious business. Okay? So you need to evaluate, you know, and so people coming from that environment with the shootings and the excessive violence and all this other nonsense come here and they're concerned about a local robbery.
Right.
You get it, folks? So third party perspective is everything. It's all in how you view it. All right?
I should add one more point. I moved here. I wasn't far out of the military. I immediately went and applied for a weapons permit. I got permanent residency immediately, again, because of family ties. I carried a weapon here for 2 years. I realized that it was a complete waste of time. These people are not violent. Very rare that you're going to run into any violence. I haven't carried it in 15 years. I try to keep it clean and, you know, tucked away, but it's just not necessary here. But in the U.S., I always carried. All right? So think about that for a little bit.
It's funny you said that. I do that now. I have to not make a mistake and bring it on the plane with me, because I'm so used to carrying.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's when you said the shootings and everything. It is hard when you said that.
You bet.
That touched with me, because I carry my weapon everywhere I go.
I did too. Always. You know, I had a business. I was always moving a few bucks here and there. And I felt it was important. I had 2 small children, beautiful wife. I want to make sure everybody of mine is safe. Just don't need that here. And if there's somebody yells, it's amazing. It's a whole different reaction in this country than you'll find in the States. People come to film in the States. People come to watch what's going on here. They want to know what's going on so they can resolve it, has been my experience.
Yeah, and the thing is, you're going to find that in towns, they have that neighborly approach, you know? Like I lived in a town in the North Coast. Remember Abo Anico? I love it there. So it's like, if from here that door, if they're like 5 houses, I drank 5 cups of coffee. Every place, and you know I said yes. I'm going to turn down no free coffee. But anyway, they have that neighborly mentality. And so you're going to find that in most of the places in DR. Now, the capital is turning, and places like Punta Cana in the center is turning more into that Miami-ish, New York-ish type of, you know, remember I told you? They're taking all these little houses. Demolition is going on in the city, and the center of the city is expanding out. So it's become something of a metropolis, and what happens is that people get a little bit desensitized. Okay? And plus, you have so many foreigners in the capital, and they're here for business, because this is why the capital's a good investment, guys, because they come for business. But they're foreigners. They have the same mentality. Don't meet your neighbors. I ain't got time for that. So that type of thing. And even then, it's not a safety issue, like I said, unless you go to areas that are rough, because every metropolis has them. So that is where, if you notice where the news is coming from, when it does come out, it's from those areas. And then from people that have no sense. I had these clients that came over for a residency process, and these people had never been, don't speak the language. They ended up in a neighborhood I cannot possibly describe. Think about where you're from, and think about the worst neighborhood where you're from, and that's where they ended up. And they called me happy. I was like, you better get the hell out of there right now, or this story's going to end up different. You're not going to need residency where you're going. The afterlife doesn't require a residency card. Get the hell out of there. So, you know, but they were like, well, we want to explore the real DR. I'm like, the real DR is going to be the hospital. Get out of there. And it was like, I had to get them out, but they didn't care. So it's kind of about that, all right? You have to use your judgment when it comes to listening to other people's account of the DR. That's why our panel is made up of people who live here. 4 decades. They've made a life here. They've raised their family here. So it's not somebody that just came in, stood for a few months, had a bad experience, and then they went off. DR is just the worst place in the world.